afternoon and welcome to the Law and Crime Network. I'm Angelica Spanos. Thank you so much for joining us today. It is a busy day here as we are following two live trials this afternoon, and we'll bring you the latest with both of those from the courtrooms when they resume. All right, so that was the victim's sister, Millie, and this was really powerful to listen to this. Her testimony was just important here, not only because of what she said, but the fact that she was able to take the stand and do this all together. Roger, before we get into what she actually said, and we're going to play more of that for you, this girl is 7 years old now and was 5 at the time of all of this. A child this young on the stand, how does that play into all of this? And is that something you see normally?
No, it's pretty rare. I've never encountered that young of a child being placed on the stand. There's a certain hearing that has to take place to make sure that that child can testify and know the difference between a truth and a lie. And obviously, a 7-year-old can be easily manipulated, so it's difficult, and it's not something that you see every day. But the young lady, stood up and was able to tell her story, at least the questions that were asked of her.
And she did a great job too. She didn't even really sound that nervous. No,
I mean, again, I don't think in my 15 years experience, I don't even know if I've ever heard of someone that young being placed on the stand. So I'm sure there were some motions in limine from the state to put her on, and I'm sure that there were some motions from the defense to not have her on. And ultimately, it looks like the prosecution got her way, and she was able to tell of her experience with the Rosenbaums.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, let's listen to some more of what you had to say, and then we can talk about what the content of that. Wow, okay, so that was Millie's testimony, and it was frankly kind of disturbing. I mean, she said she would get spanked with Jennifer's hand as well as a belt, and she also said that Joseph did nothing to stop her during all this. Roger, listening to that, I mean, it is hard to listen to. What's your immediate reaction to this?
I'm thinking from a defense perspective, Angelica, and I'm wondering how at a disadvantage a defense attorney is cross-examining a 7-year-old, right? I mean, obviously the 7-year-old is talking about some disturbing things, being spanked, but I'm sure parents, throughout the country have spanked their child on the butt, but they're trying to relate, the prosecution is relating that spanking to the death of a child, right? So you have to kind of think about the context. They're setting it up, which I would argue is prejudicial, because a spank on the butt isn't going to result in a spleen rupture, right, and cause the death of a child by a spanking on the butt. We don't know the severity of the spank. Is it a light, slap on the butt where you scare a child, or is it someone who's a full adult putting their weight into it, and obviously that would be child abuse. So we don't know, and I think that the defense counsel will be at a distinct disadvantage in cross-examining a child, because he really can't do what he would normally do in an aggressive way. He has to really be light and gentle and ask questions to see if he can pull out other information that's beneficial to his clients or to her clients.
Right, which is seemingly kind of a different skill here, because you got to be really delicate when you have a child this young.
Absolutely. It's tough on both parts, right? No one wants to have a 7-year-old recapture in her mind what happened when she was 5, right? The spankings are not a positive thing, and we're talking about the death of her little sister. So in the context of it, I think it's difficult all the way around.
Do you think having Millie on the stand here is completely, I guess, influential for the jury? Do you think this changes things a lot?
I think it gives the prosecution a big leg up, because, again, how do you cross-examine women? These folks are not being charged with spanking, with, spanking on the butt for whatever reason. These parents or these foster parents are being charged with murdering a child by, basically hitting them or harming that child somehow, that are spleen ruptured. So I would want to know more, and I would think that the court would focus the testimony more on what this child observed that resulted, what action by the foster parents that resulted in the death of the child. Other actions, I think, are a little prejudicial.
All right, Roger P. Foley, thank you. We're going to talk more about this when we come back, but we have to take a quick break, so stay with us here on the Law&Crime Network. So that was the victim's sister, Millie, again being cross-examined. One of the things that she was getting asked about is how they played in this bedroom. Did they jump on the beds? She asked about if, she occasionally maybe bumped her head, seemingly what would be, harmless, normal things that would happen to a child who was horse roughhousing around in her room. Roger, what was she trying to show there? Why was she asking all that?
Is because with the autopsy and with the testing of the child, the CAT scans and the x-rays, they found that the child had previous injuries. And they're trying to, the prosecution is trying to show that it was the defendants, right, the Rosenbaums, that caused that. And I think that the defense counsel, in a very subtle and slow way, what you would do with a 7-year-old, is trying to show that they were normal children, that they jumped and they played. And if you jump and run and you play, you're likely to fall and possibly harm yourself, like every small child does, that gets a bump or a bruise. And I think that's what the defense was doing, because I think it's essential to their defense that they make those arguments.
Right, that these were just normal things that could happen to a kid who's playing around with toys, with beds, whatever.
Correct. I'll give you a quick example. I went to the doctor a couple of years ago, and I said, hey, my hip bothers me a little bit. And the doctor, took some x-rays and checked me out. And he goes, did you realize that, did you play any sports? And I said, yeah, I played college football. And he said, did you realize you broke your hip several years ago? No, I had no idea. But there was a fracture in my hip and also in my thigh area. But I didn't know that. So I don't know how many of us with children, can a child be injured and we not know about it, like a hairline fracture or something to that effect, and it be the result of playing. But when there's a death of a child and they look at everything, now the easy conclusion is to say that that child was harmed by the parent or the abuser, whoever it may be. So I think that's why the defense needs to talk about these things, to see about the normal, like this wasn't a sick child that was laying in bed all the time. This was an active 2-year-old, right? We all joke about the terrible twos, right? Because little kids get into things. So I think that it's important for the defense to bring out those points in the overall understanding of what goes on with a child, because the prosecution is aiming to say, hey, this child was abused from the beginning, from as soon as it came into this household, and then it got so bad that it resulted in the death. Right. Do we know that to be true? We don't know, but we're going to find out as time goes on with the trial.
That was a great example, even though it was unfortunately about your hip. Thank you, Roger. Sure. We want to jump now to talk and show you testimony from Patricia Lambert. She was Millie and Layla's foster parent immediately before Jennifer and Joseph got custody. And after Layla died, Millie went back to Patricia for a little bit of time because she was already familiar with her. So let's listen to what she said. All right, Roger. So what we hear from Patricia Lambert here is really chilling. This stuff it's hard to listen to, honestly. And this is also why the Rosenbaums are facing additional cruelty to children charges because of Millie. Talk about what you heard and what your reaction to that is from Patricia.
When I hear that, just as a human being, it gives me chills, and it makes me just think, hey, you know what? Convict this person. Death penalty, life penalty, life in prison, because you're harming a child, and that's the sacred thing that we have in our lives, right? As a child is hope and dreams and future and that cuteness, and when you hear about a 5-year-old at the time, right after death, telling her other, this woman, hey, the bruises are because the man hit me, and talking about abuse, it's chilling and throw away and send her on. As a defense attorney who has a job to do, I look at, well, that's hearsay. What did she tell you? That's hearsay. I'm assuming that there were some motions, because generally what someone tells a witness, isn't repeated. I don't know if there's some other rule in this jurisdiction that allows that, but that's your standard hearsay objection. I didn't hear a hearsay objection. So only thing I could assume was that there was some sort of counsel with the judge prior to when he made a ruling, because normally my first reaction would be to jump up as a defense attorney when I hear, what did she tell you? You know, it's clear hearsay. First week of law school.
Do you think that maybe has to do with the fact that she is a child that's saying it?
You know, I wish I knew the answer. I don't know the answer. I'll probably, after the show today, I'll go look that up because it bothers me that I don't know the answer. And here I am, an expert, you know, talking on the show, but I don't know the answer to that. So
okay.
I will look it up.
Not a problem, Roger. We have to take a break, though. So when we come back, we will continue to follow the Rosenbaum trial here on the Law and Crime Network. Stay with us.